Hello, it's Burgess Taylor, and it's Coffee Chat Monday. And it is a very rainy, dark, gray day here today. So, yes, I'm running late because I slept in this morning because I couldn't sleep last night for the pain. I'm off schedule a little bit, but that all has to do with what I'm going to be talking about today, and that is planning and journaling in the same place, all in one place, in a creative bullet journal, in an omni journal, in a one book, one system, whatever you want to call it. Now you can have other systems that coincide. I have a bullet journal that I use for morning pages. It's actually not a bullet journal. I have a Loistrom that I use for morning pages. I have a Hobonichi that I use for home finance personal stuff. But for my overall planning and journaling, and I took it out of the traveler's notebook, I have one notebook to rule them all. One notebook. And I've talked about this before. I'm going to continue because this is going to be sort of a series, because Back to Basics April has got me back to the basics. And I'm working on my goals. I'm working on my planning. And I'm working on some other things. Now, I've watched some videos, several different videos over the last couple of years, and people are of different mindsets about planning. One, a planner. A planner is a person who makes plans. A planner is a list or chart with information that is an aid to planner, like as in a day planner. So, according to other people, and I've watched videos about what planning is, what is a planner? It's something that you use to plan your life with. It is a place where you gather the actions to plan your life with. To plan what? Your day, your week, your month, your quarter, the year. I've heard people that say if you're not using a planner for planning, then it's not a planner. You know, a planner is a tool. I've heard that when you add other things into your planner, that it can get confusing and cluttering, it can overwhelm you, and you end up less productive. I've heard that using a planning system shouldn't matter what you use to write it in, as long as your system works. And you know, I have to say that that's probably the best thing I've ever heard. It doesn't matter what book I put it in, what notebook I put it in, what type of thing I put it in. If I put it in a binder, if I put it in a ring bound, if I put it in a disc bound, if I put it in a Loistrom, if I put it in a moleskin, if I put it in a 7Cs crossfield, if I put it in an Enigma, if I put it in a Hobonichi, if I put it in whatever it is, I put it in an Erin Condren, whatever I use to plan in, if my system works, it won't matter what I put it in. It will not matter what I put it in. If your system works for you, the actual part of the planning system, if it works for you, how you plan out, you could put it on one of those wall calendars. And if you have room for notes and appointments and things at the bottom of it, like I do, my calendar's pretty damn big, that could actually work for you. Whatever you use and it works for you, it shouldn't matter. If you pretty plan in your Erin Condren, or your disc bound, or your ring bound, or your Filofax, or your, that is a ring bound, but you understand what I'm saying. If I put it in a bullet journal, if I put it in whatever, if I actually color and create pretty pages, if I'm doing pretty planning in my bullet journal or my Hobonichi or my Filofax or my traveler's notebook system or whatever it is that I do, if I use pretty planning and the pretty planning just enhances my planning, great. I can understand why some people would get overwhelmed, and why for some people having pretty planning would be chaotic and cluttering, and you know why it would seem kind of cluttery. That's not a word, but we're going with it. So I'm going to say this: I am a person with ADHD, anxiety, and depression. Coloring, and that's what I'm going to call it for now. Coloring, pretty planning, helps my ADHD, because the coloring, the act of color, having pretty planning stuff, that creation of that stuff calms my anxiety and my depression. When my anxiety and depression are calmer, my ADHD isn't as bad. I am able to focus more. Focusing and planning or focus is needed when you're planning. So when I create a page for the planning part of my all-in-one book, I need to be able to focus. I need to be able to focus on what I'm doing. So I'm going to go to what I've been setting up for May. I have my Hello May, sort of, and I used a quote by Maya Angelou. And then I have this log, and I can write more information. Right now it has birthdays and holidays listed. And then we get to the calendar, because I've tried just the log. I tried doing a log, and the log does not work for me. So I did the calendar. And I did it a little bit different, because up until now, my calendars have looked more like, this. This is a little bit more compact. And even though this has more color, this is more organized to me. And I didn't realize until afterwards that I had my washi tape on the bottom upside down, but it's in there really good. And Tomoho River paper is kind of thin, so if I try to pull it off, it's going to pull my paper in. I'm not doing that because I really don't care. It's my planner. It's my journal. It's my all-in-one place book. And if people don't like it, they don't have to look at it. And to be honest, having a planner, a journal, a whatever, as long as it works for you, there are no set rules for planning or journaling. There's no set rule that says you can't plan and journal all in one place. There's no set rule that says, if I've been trying for 2 years now, and I know that when I set up my page for the week, I'm doing that works. This is what works for me. I finally have a system that works for me when I set it up for the week. This is this week's. What worked for me last week, and I set it up because I base it on what I'm doing for that week. I did some goal setting and stuff, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. So this was last week's. And as you can see, the desk is not in here yet. Thanks to work schedules and weather, we have not been able to go pick it up. We were going to be doing that today or over the weekend, and the rain and stuff just, yeah. That works for me. Focusing, breaking things down into certain areas and focusing on things works. Journaling in my one book works. And see, this is the Slim Pickens, Honey Slim Pickens challenge page. And after I was done and I watched everybody else's, I realized some of the things that I could have done with some of the supplies that Mr. Rockstar gave me. I could have cut this up and made a bunch of little things on it. I could have done all kinds of different things. I could have taken my washi tape and cut it into musical notes. I could have all kinds of things. But see, now I know. And I make lists sometimes on my journal pages. I don't always do, the same thing. I have post-it notes because I need to print out pictures. So we get to this week. Now, I did change things up for today because of this video and because what I wanted to show is that sometimes planning means getting out of your comfort zone and trying something new. This is Back to Basics April still. This is the last week. And I have talked about how I don't like to-dos on my page, but I did do a time log thing on my page right here. And I do have my to-do list right here in a little box because I talked about how if you liked it and you needed it on your page, there was a way to do it so it didn't look so offsetting on your actual journal page. My journal pages are real life journal pages. They're illustrated pages. They're illustrate your day, sketch your day, art your day, smash books, scrapbook, whatever you want to call it. But I'm planning out my day, and as I go along through the day, I am listing things that I have done, or I'm drawing things, or I'm writing things. And yes, this is sort of a memory keeping kind of thing. But it also reminds me as I go through my day and I put things down that those are the things that I've done. A lot of times those are the priority things. Those are the things I have listed in my to-do for during the week. Like, here's today's page. Coffee chat topic, planning and journaling in one book. I'm continuing with this because I think it's very important that people understand that just because one type of planner works for some people doesn't mean that you have to have that type of planner. Or just because one system, one kind of system, or somebody in the planning community says that you have to do things a certain way, means that you have to do things a certain way. I am not a professional planner. I'm not a professional journaler, but I am a real person who has things that make my planning a little different than other people's, because I have noticed if I wanted to call my notebook a creative bullet journal, I could, because I have it set up a lot like a bullet journal. I have monthly spreads, weekly spreads, I have a daily thing, I have collections in here, I have a key, I have a homemade little dashboard pocket thing. I need to go back in here and put this in a little bit better, but I have an index, I have some journaling, I have the planning part. Like I said, I have to have a calendar. I have trackers. I have this log that I wasn't really utilizing because I didn't have it set up in a way that would work for me. The tracker I've been pretty good at up until last week. Didn't do so good. This week will be a better story. I have some goal setting and some questions I asked myself. There's this week's spread, which didn't really work so well, and that's why I ended up finding one that did work for me. Now, I'm not going to say that because you use a file of facts, because you use an Erin Condren, or you use a Happy Planner, or you use a KikiK, or you use Inkwell Press, that any of those is wrong for you, because they're not if they're working for you. They don't work for me. They don't work for me, and I have tried. I spent a fortune trying to find things that would work for me, and you know what all came down to? One Book July is what saved me, because I listened to what Romney said. I listened to what Miss Vicky B said. I listened to what other people were saying in their videos when they were talking about trying different things and figuring out what was working for them. I tried. That first One Book July was a big fat failure for me because I was trying to do what other people were doing and I wasn't doing what really worked for me. And at first it was, oh, well, I didn't like the paper. I didn't like the size of the notebook. I didn't like this and I didn't like that. And, you know, I kept hearing in the back of my head Romney saying, if your planning system works for you, it doesn't matter what you use it in. What kind of notebook you use it in, what kind of planner you use it in, what kind of anything you use it in, if you use it in a bullet journal, like an official bullet journal, whatever it is that you're doing it in, a Hobonichi, whatever it is you're doing it in, it won't matter if your actual planning system, the way that you plan, works for you. It won't really matter where you put it, in a traveler's notebook, in an insert, and on a wall calendar. As long as your actual planning system works how you plan, it won't matter where you use it. Now, we do have preferences. And I finally got it in my head. I finally understood what she meant. How you plan, how you see things, how you set things up. And how I set things up, what works for me is that in order to calm the anxiety and the depression, I have to have some kind of art, some kind of color, some kind of creative thing that I'm doing. So we go back to doing some kind of something. This is the only page. We don't have a lot. I'm not real happy with this. My washi tape messed up and I was like, oh well, and I just didn't have the time or the inclination. So this is about as minimalistic as it gets for me, and I did 1 week and I stopped. I have a couple of things over here and I will keep going. I will go back to this calendar because this makes sense to me. And even though this one is not as it is more colorful than the other one, this one actually works better for me. It's simpler for me, and I did it different. I tried something different. So I have things, and I will go through. This is week 1, and I have some things listed. I have washi tape covering up 2 things. I can look, and I put all the things I know ahead of time. My Writer Wednesday video schedule, my journal jam on Friday, my coffee chats on Mondays. I went ahead and did that. And I have that, and then I go through and I go, okay, for this first week in May, what do I want and need to do for Patreon? Now I've started the second week on Tuesday the 9th, Patreon, how to do flower doodles. And so I'm going to be doing a PDF, and I'm also going to be filming some flower doodling, for process video, so that they can see what I'm doing, how I ended up doing those PDF doodles. And then I have the planning part. I'm going to be doing a planning because I'm separating, even though it's all in one book, how my mind works when it comes to planning. So how my mind works when it comes to planning is that, okay, I've listed out the holidays and stuff, and I can look at that. And then I can look at my calendar, and I can say, okay, I know that my goals for the month of May are Mother's Day is the second Sunday in May. So I need to have the things that I'm creating for Mother's Day presents for my mom, my mother-in-law, and my daughter done by that Saturday. I need to have them done by that Saturday. So I have this weekend coming, and then 2 weeks to get those done and made. So this Friday I will be going shopping to get all the materials. This week I'm doing research to figure out what exactly I can do and how I can do it, because I'm going to be doing 3 separate things, actually probably 4 because I'm making myself one. So I need to know what I'm doing. So I have research this week. I'd already started the end of last week doing the research, and I'm going to be filming the process for Patreon, like where I'm making at least 1 or 2, because some of them are gonna be different. What I make for my daughter is not going to be the same as what I make for my mom. So I know that this week, and I have it listed for this week, on Friday, get the supplies, okay? And then so I can start putting it together. Now at the beginning, I have some notes where I start researching how to do those. I've already started the process. I'm looking up videos. So as I go through this week, maybe I'll make a notation in my notebook on whatever day, like if I find a video or whatever, I can make a list so I can go back to that video. I'll have it highlighted or something so that when I go to start this, I can rewatch the video before I go to making this and doing it myself. This is also the last week of Camp NaNoWriMo, and I'm 3 days behind now because I didn't get very much writing done over the weekend because I was in a lot of pain. And sitting at this desk, not having my laptop, sitting at this desk writing is really uncomfortable when I'm in a lot of pain. So I chose to do a little bit of writing in my notebook that I used for my novel. And I did get some of that done, but I didn't write nearly as much because, like I said, I was in a lot of pain. So if I'd had the laptop, it could have got comfortable and written a lot more. But I don't have the laptop right now. And that's really put it in November's NaNoWriMo. Hank just made things hinky. I just couldn't get things done as much because I have realized that I rely on that laptop for extra writing, to get extra writing done. I do an hour or 2 hours worth of writing at the desktop, but the majority of my writing I actually do at the laptop, because that way I can sit on the couch while we're watching TV and write. I can sit in the bed and write. I can take the laptop elsewhere on artist date and I can go write. Right now, the only thing I can do is take that notebook and that pen and do that. So anyway, my planning is arranged around what I know I need to get done this week, because this is the last week of April, and I have a ton of words I need to write. So this week is kind of going to be a slower week with the videos. My videos are not going to have as much editing. I'm not going to worry about that. I've been working on the plan for this week. I have more detailed information for the first week of May, because this week is kind of up in the air because I'm trying to get my writing done. So my planning system has to work for me. But in order for me to look at all the things I need to look at, if this was just a calendar, which I have on my wall, I have in the front of the Hobonichi, this were just a calendar and I hadn't organized it in a way that helped me focus, because seeing that art, that what I call art, the color, when seeing the color, it helps me focus. I don't know what it is about color, but it helps my brain. It helps the combination of the left brain, right brain thing. So I can actually look at this calendar and focus. And that might be the exact opposite for other people. Some people don't like the color. They don't like the color. They like a bare bones, minimalistic style planning system. So my system would not work for them at all. It would make them cringe. And that's okay. Because see, there are no rules. There are no set rules. It's all about what works for you. It has to be about what works for you. And what works for me is combining my journaling and my planning into one notebook, all in one place. The one book to rule them all. And that's honestly what works for me, is this way. I have said before, and I will say again, if the Hobonichi had more than 1 page per day and it had extra in the back, a big section in the back for note taking where I could do, this would be the perfect notebook. So what I have done essentially is made my own. Now, granted, it won't last for a whole year because I'm on page 105 right now, and I started this in March. So, yeah, it's not going to last me a whole year. I'll be good if it lasts me 6 months. But I am using the Hobonichi for my personal home, finance, that kind of stuff, planning. And then some days I use the pages for journaling, and then some days I only have planning stuff on them. Well, there's still art, but on this page there's nothing but planning and some color. See, I'm going to have color on there no matter what. I'm going to have color. So I'm going to get more involved. I'm actually going to, when I'm going to do a flip through and show you how I have it organized, what I'm doing with it, the changes I'm making after Back to Basics April, because I am making changes. It is all coming together, and hopefully that will help. I'm not saying my way is the right way. I'm just saying that other people's way may not be the right way either. That's what I'm saying. It has to be what works for you. It really has to be what works for you. And there's no steadfast rule for planning, except that you have to. Planner piece means finding something that works for you, that enables you to plan and be productive and organized with your planning. To be organized enough so that you can be productive, so that it is efficient, so that you are working smarter, not harder. That's what planner piece is about. Journal piece is pretty much finding a way to journal, to record your life, if that's what you want to do. A journal is a daily record of news, events, personal things. Could be a diary, a daily record, a logbook, a chronicle, anything like that. And if I had to give a definition to what journal piece is, I'd say that for me, it's a way to sort of combine information, like what people think of as maybe some things I've done research on, maybe some quotes, maybe some ideas, some brainstorming, goal setting, illustrating my day, all kinds of different things I put into my journal. And journal piece to me comes from a lot of different areas. For some people, I think journal piece has to do with finding the size of a notebook, a journal that works for you, the type of paper that works for you, the style of journaling that works for you. Like for me, I sort of have a style, but at the same time, I change things up randomly. Some days I do more diary style journaling, text journaling. Some days I add more art. Some days I just add background and then journal over the background. Some days I add lots of pictures. Some days I add clip art. Some days I draw and doodle and watercolor. Some days I add ephemera. A lot of times I add real life ephemera. So I think journal piece is a little bit harder to define because it's more of a way of journaling that works for you. And for me, it's a combination of a number of things. So, like I said, journal piece can come from all different kinds of things. And sometimes, for me at least, I found that journal piece comes from finding the tools that work the best for me, that I really enjoy, that are one, budget friendly for the most part, and two, that help expand my horizons, that open my mind, that can allow me to chronicle my life in a way that is creative, to memory keep, to text journal, or diary style journal, or commonplace journal, the variety of ways that I journal. And like I said, it really just depends on the day. I've been journaling since elementary school, so I didn't really need to search for journal piece so much as I've always journaled. But to find a way that I could combine all those things so that I didn't have like 7 journals, and like one journal that was a commonplace journal, and one journal that was for text journaling or diary style journaling. Now a lot of that deeper inner thought, feelings that I need to get out, a lot of that comes out in what is called what are my morning pages or evening pages, because sometimes I do them in the evenings. So a lot of that kind of journaling happens with the morning pages. The chronicling my day, illustrating my day, talking like a log book kind of thing, or that happens on the spread for each day that I do, where I combine, sort of a memoir with things that I've done, illustrating with watercolor or clip art or pictures or ephemera or all of the above. Yeah, so I think journal piece is a little bit harder to define because in my head, it's all of those things. It's every single bit of it. It's not one particular thing. I found that I absolutely love Tomoho River paper. So part of my journal piece has to do with the paper that I'm using. Some of my journal piece comes from the paper being able to house, to handle all of the things I throw on it, like the watercolor and the doodling and the drawing and the waterproof ink. And, I use a fountain pen a lot to draw with and to write with. Um, I have found that for me, I found that platinum carbon ink works the best for me. It's my absolute favorite go-to. I also like Sharpie pens. I also like mild liners because they're easier on the Tomoho River paper. Some of that has to do with some of the supplies, but in a way, utilizing the things that I do have on hand, the budget-friendly supplies, everyday ephemera can be found anywhere. So I think that the journaling piece is a little bit harder to define, but we're going to get to some more of that later on. My journaling piece comes from my big journaling piece comes from being able to journal. For part of that 2 months, I was so sick, I didn't want to journal. Couldn't journal. My anxiety and my depression were so high, just so bad, I couldn't. And when that's out of whack, my ADHD is out of whack, I just was burnt out, exhausted, physically and mentally. And that was part of what led me to Back to Basics April for me, and for changing things up with the journal and getting back to the basics that worked for me, because I was spread out too thin. I was burnt out. And it had nothing to do with my Omni journal that I was using. I loved that notebook. I love what I was doing. I was doing the same thing I'm doing now in that one. I keep going back to what a lot of people refer to as an Omni journal. I called it that for a very long time. I just have really gotten tired of the labels because people are like, well, what? It's a fancy bullet journal. It's a fancy illustrated journal. It's a Hobonichi, like a hybrid between a Hobonichi and a bullet journal and, something else. Because I do a lot of all of the above in my one book. It is my one book to rule them all. Even when I set up things again for May, when I set up the other things that I have that coordinate with my Omni journal, my creative bullet journal, my one book to rule them all, my all in one place book, it is the epicenter. And other things work around it because it has the majority of everything in it. Even the Hobonichi works around it because it is my personal and home and finance. And some of what I write down in here, I have to put in here to coordinate with doctor's appointments and stuff, because I need to know these two have to kind of work hand in hand. This is the one that has the planning and the journaling in it that will be housed, that my grandson can keep now, or my kids. Now this one, yes, but this one, like I said, I don't really show on social media. I mean, I've showed you some pages, and these do have to-dos at the top. It's not that I really don't like them up there, though. Even though I don't like them, to me, they get in the way of the art. They get in the way of the art. But I need the to-dos. So after much consideration and trying to remember to have an open mind, I decided to do something like this. I may change things up continuously until I get to a point where I can do a time log and a to-do list and have it on my journal page where it's not so evasive. It's not so in your face as a to-do list. We'll see, because I think there has to be a way to do that. There has to be a way to do that and have it kind of work with the page instead of being right in my face where I just am looking at it going, what? As my grandson would say, I don't want it. That's it for now. And this is a rather long coffee chat, but I think it's an important one. My only bit of advice is to remember this. It's your journal. It's your planner. It's your notebook. It's your Hobonichi. It's your bullet journal. It's your whatever it is. It's yours. Own it. Make it yours. Make it work for you. It's yours. Own it. Nobody can tell you what you can and can't do with it. Nobody can tell you what is and isn't right for you. Nobody can say, hey, there are these rules. There are no rules. There are no rules except that a planner is a person who makes plans. It's a list or a chart with information that's an aid to your planning. That's what a planner is. It's an aid to your planning. Your planning is the part that you are writing in it, the stuff that you are doing. That's your planning. That's the planning part. The planner, it's just a tool. So if you want to use one notebook, one traveler's notebook with a bunch of inserts, a bullet journal, if you want to create a bullet journal, I finally figured out how to watercolor in a Leuchtturm. So I could actually use a Leuchtturm now. And I will probably continue to use a Leuchtturm, the ones that I do have, for some of the more specific bullet journaling, like my writer bullet journaling and the spiritual bullet journaling. This one I was using for projects, but now it's pretty much just become morning pages. That's my advice. Don't let anybody tell you that whatever it is you're doing is wrong, or that, you know, it's not the right way to do it, because if it's working for you, it's the right way to do it. And me included. I mean, just because I have to have creative stuff in mind in my planning, just because I have to have color, I have to have something like this, doesn't mean you do. You know, I mean, it doesn't mean that you do, just because I do. It's what works best for me, because like I said, I'm a right brain, left brain kind of person. I have to do things, you know, that help me focus, and getting the art on the page or focus, you know, it helps me. So thanks, y'all.